Okay, so the Basketball Hall of Fame enshrinement ceremonies happened this past weekend, and I thought to myself, why not make a video really discussing Chris Webber and him finally making it after 8 years of being eligible for it. Now, many people have said over the past couple of years that he should have made it sooner, he should have been in the Hall of Fame sooner. And this video today is not me trying to make a case for anything, but really trying to look at the possible reasons and really the possible causes that may have led to it taking this long for him to get to the ceremony podium and making that Hall of Fame speech that he just made on Saturday. Now, the first reason why I think it took this long for Weber to even be inducted into the Hall of Fame is because of the waiting time he had to wait to even be able to get nominated to the ballot. Now, if you don't know, at some point, a couple of years ago, you had to wait, after you retired, you had to wait 5 more seasons from the point that you retired to even have your name being nominated. And really, what that amounted to was you waiting for 6 years until you could potentially make it to the Hall of Fame in your first year of eligibility. And unfortunately, he retired in 2008. So that means he had to wait till 2014 for his name to even be nominated and potentially be in the finalist in terms of the Hall of Fame. Now, I don't even think he got his name nominated at all, so he didn't make it to the finalist list. And most people don't make it after their first year of eligibility unless they're a very, very good player. And so Chris Webber, people are saying, oh, look, he didn't win a championship. He never was an MVP. He only has 5 All-Stars. The people that he was up against were also players like, he had Alonzo Mourning, Mitch Richmond, you had Guy Rogers, you had Sarunas Marciulionis. These are players that they played a long time ago and they've been waiting for their chance at the Hall of Fame for a long time. So I think they deserve it. And there's always next year and the following years, really. And now in late 2015, something interesting happened. And that's when the committee behind the Hall of Fame decided to reduce the waiting time for a player to be named. And they shortened it from 5 seasons in the retirement to 4 seasons before a player can be nominated. And so that happened. And at that year when it happened, it fast tracked players like Shaquille O'Neal and Yao Ming to be considered in the Hall of Fame ballot. So you had Chris Webber having to run up against players that were going to be nominated a year later, but now having to be nominated alongside him, like he couldn't compete against those players. And then in late 2017, you have them reducing it from 4 seasons in retirement to 3 seasons after retirement. Like this is insane. And so now you have to go up against players like Jason Kidd, Steve Nash, Ray Allen, Grant Hill, Chauncey Billups. And all these players ended up making it to the Hall of Fame except for Chauncey Billups, which, by the way, to this day, he still hasn't been inducted into the Hall of Fame, which is quite criminal, okay? He's the only player in NBA history to have a winning record against Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, and LeBron James, okay? This guy, and he has a ring. Come on, this guy needs to be in the Hall of Fame ASAP. I can't believe I have to say this. Now, you could be a case that Chris Webber deserves to be in the Hall of Fame over players like Ray Allen or Grant Hill. But the problem is, obviously, I guess the voters decided that Ray Allen having won a ring was more important, and Grant Hill having played longer is also more important. So, it's sad. Now, these guys did deserve it. I'm not going to take any credit out of them. They deserve to be the Hall of Fames that they were. Now, I'm just going to say that it's crazy because what took him 6 years in total took some of these guys 4 years or even 5 years to get. So, Chris Webber wasn't blessed to be retiring at that period because some of these players, fortunately for them, had to wait less years to get there. So you're saying to yourself, if he had to wait 4 years, right, after 2008, for his name to be perhaps considered into the Hall of Fame in 2012, I'm pretty sure you can make a good case for Chris Webber being in the finalist at the very least. When you have names like Jamal Wilkes and Chet Walker there, I'm pretty sure Chris Webber would have been in the finals at that point. Another reason that's obvious that, some people talk about, but not many because it's not really something that is that big of an issue. The amount of people that are referees, coaches, contributors in the media, and then female players as well that are put into the Hall of Fame are also to be considered because they've taken a huge amount of the space that could be reserved to players to be put in the Hall of Fame. Now, the reason why people don't talk about that too much is because, well, there's no other way to represent those guys. You have to represent everybody, not just the male players. You have to represent female players. You have to represent the coaches, the referees that were very legendary, the people in the media, and other basketball aficionados that contributed largely to the landscape of the sport. So that makes sense. And that's not really something that many people can fight back against because it's fair. You have to be fair. You have to represent people fairly. And I think that's something they should do. And it's not something that I would really have a problem with. Now, this perhaps has to be the biggest reason why Chris Webber wasn't even voted to be a Hall of Famer for this long, and it has to do with his past, not just in college, but dating back to middle school, okay? Chris Webber was noticed by a guy by the name of Ed Martin, and Ed Martin noticed him during a middle school game. He was a booster that had an interesting relationship with the University of Michigan's basketball program, and he went to Chris Webber's church, and he began fostering a relationship with his family, that is Chris Webber's family, and he ended up making a lot of visits to his house. And between 1988 and 1993, Ed Martin gave Webber about $280,000. Okay, now the problem here was that the money that he was giving to him and other players was him trying to launder money from an illegal gambling operation. And eventually, when a scandal broke out, you have Chris Webber confessing to having received the money and only having repaid $38,200, which was an amount that was identified via a specific transaction that was tied to Chris Webber himself. Now, because of this, his school records in terms of the games he played were stripped. He was stripped of his honors in college. So basically, all the games that he played, all the achievements he made in high school and college, gone. They weren't really considered. They weren't even a factor anymore. People weren't looking to those things because, well, there was a whole scandal that happened with Ed Martin. So now, I'm pretty sure the people that vote for these, Basketball Hall of Fame awards, they take a lot of issue with people that have had scandals like this in the past. And they look a lot to amateur basketball to see whether or not, they've been an upright student, they did their job, they played well as well. You have cases like these where it's unfortunate, but, Chris Webber being a player that averaged 20 points a game in his career, almost 10 rebounds a game, and 4.2 assists, and he had 5 All-Star appearances. This man was a pretty good player, and many people say at his peak was amongst the best. And it's unfortunate that he had to contend against the likes of Kobe and Shaq, and then he had to contend against the likes of Tim Duncan and the Spurs. Many people say if it wasn't so stacked up against him, he may have won a championship himself, or at the very least, may have gone to the finals. So yeah, I think those were the reasons that contributed to him having his name being inducted this year rather than having it inducted sooner. Now, of course, there could be other reasons that we don't know of. Behind the scenes, there could have been something going on, and perhaps this doesn't just extend to Chris Webber, but also other players, like I mentioned, Chauncey Billups. I might do a video on him because that's criminal, man. I can't believe that guy's in the Hall of Famer yet. I mean, okay. Better late than never. Congratulations, Chris Webber. You deserve it. You are definitely a Hall of Famer. Guys, comment your player that you think should be in the Hall of Fame that isn't in the Hall of Fame yet.